Hello, everyone. Thank you so much for being here. We're so excited to have you for the webinar, Improving Cell Coverage by Turning Streetlights into Small Cell Sites. My name is Laura Murphy, and I'm with Tech Connect here to moderate and MC our meeting. And I'm so excited for us to discuss how small cell technology enhances network coverage. And we're going to learn a little bit about how Rumford, Maine specifically has done that and done it effectively, and what we can learn from their experience. So um, this is kind of how we'll go through the day for the meeting. We'll go over what it takes getting coverage in small towns. We'll review the case study for Rumford. We'll look at insights and attachment agreements, and then we'll go to you for questions. So if you have any questions, please put them in the questions Q&A tab on your GoToWebinar control panel, and we'll get to as many of those as we can at the end. And I'm sure that the panelists would also be happy to connect with you, or you can connect through me, after the fact if there's anything pressing that you'd like to learn that isn't covered today. So joining me today are Mark Carter. He's the Vice President of Smart Solutions at RTE Energy Solutions. George O'Keefe, who will speak on behalf of Rumford, Maine. He's the Town Manager and Economic Development Director. Mike Irizarry, who's the Executive Vice President and CTO at US Cellular. Dave Wong, who's the Vice President of Project Deployment for Ubiquia. So thank you so much all for being here for this conversation and to share a bit about this case study, and so that we can all learn a little bit more. So without further ado, I'll turn it over to you, Mark.
Thanks, Laura. So I work for RTE Energy Solutions, and we're an energy services company, or commonly referred to as an ESCO. And over the last 10 years, we've worked with over 350 municipalities, including the town of Rumford. And one of our main business lines has been converting older HID streetlights to LEDs. As part of that, a lot of municipalities had the opportunity to acquire or buy back their streetlight assets from utilities, especially in the US. So above and beyond the energy savings and the maintenance savings of that, it really provided a strategic infrastructure for these towns and cities to add or provide value-added services. And working with Ubiquia for the past 6, 7 years, we've used them a lot for streetlight controls and air quality sensors, and also for camera platforms. But when they came out with this street radio, the ability to add cellular coverage that's powered and mounted to streetlights, it was a natural fit. So we were kind of a facilitator to help put Ubiquia together with the town of Rumford, and we're very excited about the results, and happy to take any questions at the end. Laura?
All right, George, we'll hear from you.
Well, good morning, everybody, and just really happy to be here today. Mark did a great job of summarizing what Real-Term Energy has done in collaboration with the town of Rumford. And speaking about our 5G opportunity here today, I think one of the points of emphasis really as we went into this project was the realization that the value is the signal. That's sort of our perspective on what this opportunity really brings to a locality. What you are doing is you are propagating a signal into your community that shows that the community is connected, and it is able to sort of step forward into the 21st century in a very, I think, positive way. Sometimes, and in some of the questions that I've answered previously to other municipalities about this opportunity, there can be an emphasis on revenue or an emphasis on the monetary opportunity. There is a monetary opportunity here. But I land very strongly on the idea that the 5G signal itself and propagating that 5G signal into your community, and the way that that helps, as you'll see in a couple slides with your existing cell networks, is really where the value comes from. So we really emphasize that, in terms of economic development, the modern world we live in, that communication is key to the exchange of goods and services, and it's certainly our foundation of growth. Go ahead. So we'll just have a brief little video here, show you some of what we're doing in the town, and it's got some really nice backdrops of our town as well. but just speaking over this really quickly, we're really getting this signal to propagate out into areas of the town that are deeply historic, and putting it into our most densely populated parts of the town that need the signal the most. Also putting it near our municipal recreation facilities as well. Awesome. So, when we talk about, using existing infrastructure, obviously, our electrical utility owns the poles, but the town owns the arm of the streetlight itself and the fixture. And so our agreement was on a fixture attachment agreement and not a pole attachment agreement, because the pole is owned by the utility. So Ubiquia is attaching to our fixtures. That's what the attachment agreement specifies. And again, that's existing infrastructure. And that's really our very sort of creative approach to getting everybody collaborating on how to take advantage of this opportunity. We did help facilitate alongside Ubiquia the ability to handle the billing side of this. We also facilitated connections to the fiber providers who provide the backbone back-end service that goes to these units. I would say that from the town's point of view, one of the very beneficial things that this deployment does is it continues to utilize the existing fiber network at a higher intensity level. We believe that increasing utilization of existing fiber optics is certainly one of the ways to encourage additional investment by the telecom carriers who build out fiber networks. And so we see that as very positive, and we see wireless and wired working together as a mesh. We don't necessarily see them as competing against each other. Those services all provide various signals and various services in a variety of different locations and ways. But when we use our existing infrastructure more, we see lots of benefits from that. Also, sort of that middle point there, it is extremely beneficial in our community to take call load and call volume off of the existing 4G deployment that US Cellular has in Rumford and have it come on to this 5G. And certainly from our perspective, in a public safety sense, it's very, very beneficial to have a more balanced load of calls and call volumes on the various nodes in the community, which makes it easier for us to ensure that we don't have overloaded nodes and overloaded cell towers. Again, partly a public safety issue, but also partly issues related to visitation and some of the seasonal flows of people who come in and out of the community at times, or even for events. And then I think also the locality in terms of the more local, more residential perspective, which is just that citizens benefit from enhancing opportunities for remote work and new businesses. 5G and wireless is not always necessarily thought of as something that people think of for remote work, but when you know that you have it as a backup plan, and when you know that your cell density and your signal density is so high that you're going to be able to get on to one platform or another to be able to perform work, I think it increases the confidence necessary for remote workers to locate in a community. So certainly not a bad thing if remote workers come into the community looking perhaps at living in an apartment in one of these beautiful brick buildings here on Hancock Street that you're seeing in the background there, and they say, oh, I've got broadband internet going into my residence here, and I've got a 5G signal if I ever need it. So those are sort of in a multitude among many, many reasons why the value of this project is in the signal that it will put out in your community. All right. So I think at this point, I'm going to be passing it off to Mike, Chief Technology Officer for US Cellular, Mike Irizarry, and take it away, Mike.
Thanks, George. Thanks, Laura. Happy to be here and look forward to the Q&A. Let me just say that our customers expect certain things from us as a wireless provider: value, reliability, high quality, dependable connectivity for voice and data. And our entire value proposition as a company is positioned on this. And it really all boils down to the quality of the signal, as George mentioned in his presentation. If you look forward, traffic continues to grow, and to support that, we need more infrastructure, we need more spectrum, and we need new technology. Those three things together are the ingredients that will allow us to support the traffic growth and provide a high quality service. And as a CTO, when I look forward to wireless network infrastructure, what I see is networks with layers of nodes. You've got your macro layer, which is well built out, providing wide coverage. But to support the growth and a highly reliable network, we're going to need additional layers. And these layers are going to be smaller nodes, leveraging existing street furniture and infrastructure with a lower power, lower height, that works together harmoniously with the broader macro network. And together, these solutions will be able to support the growth and provide it in a low cost, effective cost, reliable fashion, and also in an aesthetically pleasing way to the communities where we deploy them. I also see the development of these solutions and the deployment as a partnership. And that's exactly what played out in Rumford. The partnership between Ubiquia, our company, US Cellular, the city, and RTE really is a perfect example of this future concept realized today in Rumford. And when I look at the slide, you see the benefits right away. Better reliability, better capacity management, and the deployment was faster than traditional approaches that we have used. And the solution itself allows us to enhance it through software upgrades because it's a centralized baseband, and add additional nodes as required to surgically address coverage issues and capacity issues. And we're excited about that because the future network really is layers on layers, but also disaggregated to support the growth in a scalable way. So we're excited about the partnership, excited about the solution, and it fits into our set of solutions for supporting growth into the future. So I look forward to the questions when we get to the panel. So Laura, I'll turn it back over to you.
All right, great. Thank you. Okay, we'll hear from Dave now.
Hello, thanks for everyone's time. Just wanted to run through a few things really quickly so we can get to the Q&A session. But with the Rumford program that we deployed in conjunction with the other parties that are on this call right now, it really starts with a strong partnership with the wireless operators, the wireless carriers, really understanding what their needs for capacity and coverage are. We have a lot of those strong relationships with the various wireless operators that can use this technology to help deploy more strategically, quicker, and do it in scale. Number two is making it easy to access Streetlights. So there's a couple components to that. One is the form factor of our Ubiquia Street Radio that allows it to simply attach to pre-existing infrastructure that's already out in your towns, your cities, everywhere else. Specifically here, we're talking about streetlights, which are about every 150 feet down major roads. The time it takes to install one of these things is minutes. Very, very simple. It plugs into the existing NEMA socket there. So obviously the form factor makes it easy. The second aspect that makes it easy is our teams working with the towns, with the cities, with utility companies alike to establish what we refer to as attachment agreements. These are agreements that gives us the right to deploy these street radios on existing street lights. So that's a key part to this. Number three is working with the pole owners to establish a fee that encourages investment. So what we're talking about there is that wireless operators, Mike Irizarry knows this, wireless operators have shareholders, they have budgets, they have time constraints, and it's really incumbent upon the pole owners, and all the parties collectively to find a way to make it simple, quick, and cost effective for the wireless operators to deploy, so it encourages greater deployment of this in strategic areas that are having or experiencing coverage and capacity issues. So with that, I'll turn it back over to you, Laura. Thank you.
All right, thank you so much, Dave. And I'll invite everyone to rejoin us on camera. If you have questions, now's a great time to enter them in the control panel. We'll go ahead and start with some that I have from the group, and we'll jump to that. So we received these early. One of them is a question that says, can these be installed on a pole that only uses solar energy? Are there any limitations there? From Yvonne. Anybody want to take
Yeah,
that?
so I think I can take that. Typically, we utilize existing street lights with commercial power that are going to them. Number one, for the reliability of it and so forth, where the street radio is not at risk of going down in the event of a problem with solar power and so forth. So typically, we do install on traditional street lights that have commercial power servicing them.
Okay, great. I have another question. This one is, how are smaller cities doing this? Don't they have the need for data engineers or data scientists that might not be readily available? So how are you seeing this in smaller communities?
Yeah, so I think if I'm understanding the question correctly, no, it really doesn't require data scientists or engineers. This is really a very basic need based on capacity and coverage. The wireless operators like Mike Irizarry and his engineering teams, they understand where there's problems with their network, obviously as constituents or people of communities and so forth. You also know the areas that are problematic. This is really where we're trying to bring all aspects of the need together to solve it by deploying these street radio systems. So no, we do the heavy lifting. We know where the areas are. I don't believe it requires data scientists or engineers to help facilitate this. This is really born out of a desire to improve the lives and connectivity of people.
And I'll take a stab at that as well.
Mhm.
As a municipality, when we start seeing drop calls that occur at times when we have a lot of visitors in town and things like that, we know experientially that we have a need. We also know from a development standpoint that we want to have a 5G signal in the community. The third thing that we know, typically prior to U.S. Cellular probably would be aware of this. The carriers are probably aware of the fiber infrastructure around us, but the other thing that we know is where our fiber infrastructure is. And so if you know where your fiber lines are going in and out of your community, then you have the ability to help Ubiquia as a partner identify sites for potential 5G deployment and sort of alongside the carriers to sort of work through what kind of a footprint really works for everybody. So in terms of small cities and stuff like that, I mean, really, we are functioning off of our experience. And our experience, for the most part, is really generally on a day-to-day basis very, very good with 4G. However, we do get to a point, certain perhaps peak times or whatever, where you do start to see degradation. And the carriers all know this, and that's not news to anybody. So we benefit enormously from taking the time to work with partners such as Ubiquia and US Cellular to enhance connectivity in the community. So really, we see the public interest as being represented through the process of improving connectivity for our community.
Awesome. We've gotten many questions in the vein of, what type of city, what size of city, that kind of thing. So can you share what is sort of a typical profile of a city that would do this? Are you seeing this in every size? I mean, obviously the value, quality of life back to residents is clear, and value back to the city. But for actual implementation, maybe Dave, can you speak to what's the typical profile that you've been working with on this?
Yeah, I think I can answer this in conjunction with Mike Irizarry. Obviously, Mike
Mhm.
is extremely well versed in the area of network engineering and so forth. But I think really there is no right or wrong answer to where this best fits. This is really a solution that is relatively new. It's very unique. Um, it's something that can be deployed in any town, any village, any city, any location, large or small, depending on wherever the needs are. This allows wireless operators to to strategically deploy uh, additional capacity, additional coverage without spending hundreds and hundreds $1 million deploying large cell sites and everything else. This really makes it uh, easy for the operators to deploy. Mike, I don't know if there's anything you want to
Yeah,
add.
thanks, Dave. I will add. So when we look at to what George said earlier, we have a pretty good sense for where the capacity is needed, where growth is taking off, and it varies by city, the trajectory of the growth rate. We also know where reliability is an issue, where the drop call performance is not up to expectations. We use crowdsourced data, and then we take that plus feedback from people like George and customers directly, and we put it into our engineering machine, and it'll come back and say, these are the areas that you need better signal, more capacity, and then we have a budget. What's the cost, versus the benefit? And then the other factor is, can we engineer a solution that's aesthetically pleasing to the community? I mean, it's easy in some respects for me just to put a 200-foot tower in the middle of the city, and it might solve the problem, but it's going to breach our budget. It's probably going to make the community unhappy. So what Dave's talking about is a solution that allows us to achieve our budget goal, our investment goal, improve the service capacity, signal strength, but do it in a way that's very stealthy. It's leveraging existing stuff. So we put those parameters out there. We go to Dave and Ubiquity and say, hey, let's work together to come up with a design in the city. We engage with George, and we come up with that solution and get it in. And why I like it, it was mentioned earlier, is we get it in record time. Um, I think traditional approaches can take years to go through the process of getting agreements in place, permitting, getting the fiber deployed. And so I don't think the solution is restricted to certain cities. I think it's a tool that can be used pretty much anywhere as a function of those parameters, pop density and other things. I'm really excited about it, and I think we're going to see more and more of these types of solutions deployed as we move from current network designs to the future. If you can believe it, we're already working on 6G, and one of the concepts there is lower height sites, lower power, layers of network, but the customers don't see that. It's seamless. The cities don't see that. So the complexity of it all is hidden behind, this design that we've put together with our partners.
I think it's worth dovetailing onto what Mike said, and I haven't really emphasized it yet much because I talked so much about the values, is in the signal. I mean, this is a very elegant solution, especially for, I mean, we have a very historic community. The neighborhood where this solution is getting deployed has really some of our most iconic residential architecture. That's very, very special to the town and special to our community. And to be able to deploy this technological solution in a way that has really, I think from our perspective, zero visual impact whatsoever on our visual landscape and on our streetscapes is really foundational to our ability to engage in this opportunity and to see the value that the opportunity presents. That for us is the elegance of bringing together all these different existing elements and doing it in a way that has really no visual impact. I just can't emphasize that enough. It's like these units are roughly the size of an old telephone book or a large thick volume of a book, and it sits on top of your streetlight. You're not going to notice it any more than you already notice your streetlights, which is most of the time basically not at all. So from a municipal standpoint, the ability to slide this solution into neighborhoods that are already existing, very historic, and to thread it properly into our existing infrastructure is really quite extraordinary. It's not the norm that when somebody comes to us with a technological solution in whatever capacity it is that we have to provide that, whether it's on some type of utility operations or in streetscaping, that we're able to put something in there and have pretty much no visual impact at all and not have concerns about what it does to the to the historic nature of our neighborhoods. So in our opinion, this is one of the finest solutions in wireless communications that we've seen in our area in a very long time.
So if I could piggyback off of that, I did have a question for you specifically. So let's see here. Did you explore other options for your town? Were there other, grab the name of this person, but did you explore other options? Why did you go with this route? Kind of, you're saying it's elegant
Yeah.
and sort of more so, but by what measure? Kind of what
Yeah.
else did you look at? Mm-hmm.
We had actually had discussions for a long time around a variety of different solutions to help the community with communications. There had been initiatives related to public Wi-Fi. There had been initiatives related to creating a municipal broadband entity. There had been initiatives related to a variety, even broad spectrum Wi-Fi deployment in some kind of a cloud across the town. So we had sort of heard and looked at a lot of options, including some that involve federal infrastructure funds, and we did do a fiber enhancement in our downtown using federal money. What this solution does is it takes us out of the position of having to create a utility from scratch, manage it ourselves, and then find some solution that either monetizes it or allows us to collect revenues to maintain it. So this is, in my opinion, really the height of what a public-private partnership is supposed to look like, which is the private sector comes in and deploys its capital and its technology in the most intelligent way possible, and we provide our public rights to access certain types of infrastructure. And so, and then we even get paid a small fee for these units, which is nice. But really, I emphasize again the values in the signal. So what we are doing as a municipality is we are providing access to public infrastructure, which we have control over because we did an LED streetlight conversion project with Mark Carter and Real Term Energy. And because we did all that, we positioned ourselves to be able to monetize our own streetlights, which would have been unthinkable to us 4 or 5 years ago. So the answer to that question, long answer on my part, is yes. We looked at a lot of things, and what we did not want to do as a small town is position ourselves to where we had to run our own utilities and communications and all the rest of that. We have to do enough of that already as it is on the public safety side with radios.
So another one here, this could be to you, George, or to someone else, but Graham asked, how do you manage multiple companies wishing to use the same pole or hanger? And I have many, many questions about multiple providers and the ability for multiple providers to use this setup.
Yeah.
Can you speak to that?
A great problem to have. So when we did our LED streetlight deployment, part of what we did on the LED streetlights is we had smart controllers that were done by Ubiquia. So we already had an existing relationship in a certain sense with Ubiquia, but it was via Realterm and through Realterm's deployment of LED lights here. So we had a choice, right? We could enter a master agreement with Ubiquia and then allow Ubiquia to go and seek out all the carriers who they already have relationships with. Or we could have tried to piecemeal it and done, oh, well, we'll give you 5 of these and somebody else will get 6 of those, or 600 of these over here and 1,000 of these over there, or maybe you're going to all mesh them in. Our decision was from the point of view of simplicity and the fact that we already had an existing relationship with Ubiquia. It was in the public interest for us to have a single point of contact managing all these different attachments to all these streetlights. Because I think if you get into a situation where you have multiple companies and they can all access and attach, you really get into complexity on the legal side, which we avoided because we had one agreement with one company, and Ubiquia then handles all the different carriers who may want to access this. And then Ubiquia also manages the relationship with the fiber providers. They handle all that. We don't have to worry about it. We're just a happy landlord that puts out signal for our public, and we get, again, a small fee. But the monetizing our streetlights is nice, but it's really not the focus of this. It's about helping to ensure our community is connected.
Yeah.
Wow. Yeah. I'm so excited.
Also, if I may, the beauty of utilizing streetlight infrastructure is that they're typically 150 feet apart, staggered on other sides of the street and so forth. So though Mike Irizarry's team deployed street radios, we help them deploy them on certain street lights. You may have the other wireless operators utilizing the other street lights and developing, their capacity or enhancing their capacity or their coverage in that same way. So that's the beauty of it. There's nearly 60 million street lights in the United States, 360 million across the globe, and they virtually all share the same NEMA socket technology and so forth for the street radio to plug into. So it's really plug and play.
Awesome. Speaking a little bit more about service to the community, I know there are a number of companies that sort of measure the broadband connectivity for their work from home employees or remote employees. So can you speak to how this may or may not sort of meet those connectivity standards?
So without naming one of the largest technology companies in the world specifically, we have our community is certified for as a remote work site for those companies, in part because of the wired infrastructure, but also in part because of the continuity of connectivity. So what those metrics are from one company to another might vary, but our take on it is we always want to enhance connectivity, and enhancing connectivity can or may include the fact that 4G signal, which propagates off of US Cellular's towers or another carrier in other parts of the town, is now more reliable and less congested. So we do have a lot of remote workers here, and so that's one of the things that we benefit from.
Great. So this one's for Mike. What technical requirements do you have for deployment? What do you need to access if this would work in someone's city?
Yeah, there's a number of critical ingredients. Obviously, the infrastructure, the radios, the baseband, and we have different partners with that. Again, this is unique in that the radio is actually part of the smart light mounting platform, and that's what makes it special. But we also need fiber, reliable power, reliable fiber to get full benefit of the spectrum that we deploy on that radio. That stuff isn't really hard. Frankly, the hard part has historically been getting the right to put the equipment on the mounting structure, whether that's the pole or whether that's the street light. And that's why we really like this solution and partnership, because I can get that equipment connected. We'll just look at the slide. I mean, in record time for me, and that's always been the long pole in the tent for us deploying equipment to get better signal and better capacity. So I would say those are the ingredients. Those are readily available for us. It's really the access to the mounting structure and the power and the fiber.
So off of that, I've got a few questions about fiber. So is that a one-to-one? Do you need fiber to every pole?
Yeah, you want me to take that, Dave, or you want to take it?
Yeah. So this requires fiber, but each of these units can be daisy chained in an area. So for example, when we were going down a street and we deployed them, we just daisy chain the fiber. You bring the fiber to the first one, you daisy chain the rest of them. It makes it that simple.
Okay.
Yeah, if I could just add to that, Laura, so you didn't need fiber to the nodes, but the nodes could use a unique wavelength within that daisy chain fiber. And as long as that wavelength has enough capacity for the spectrum you're transmitting on that node, the solution works just fine.
Great. There's another question related to power. How would you, Malik asked, how would you get 24/7 power to poles that don't have 24/7 power for such a solution? Would it work? Do you have, magic tricks you have up your sleeve there?
That's a trick.
Magic.
No, unfortunately, there's no current solution for switched street lights or street lights that are on circuits and so forth. We have to do some upgrades and so forth, but the situation that you try to avoid in every situation, and those of you that experience snowstorms, if you're in the geographical areas that experience hurricanes or earthquakes or any other natural disaster, is you do everything you can to avoid power outages and so forth. So what we utilize is constant and continuous electrical service. And Mark, you can speak to that because you're.
Yeah, I'd say from that perspective, whether you have an existing pole that you want to bring power to, I think you'd work with your local utility. And there's going to be some areas that maybe the municipalities don't own their streetlight assets. I mean, you can install poles relatively cheaply and then power those poles. So if you want to work the infrastructure, you can. But if you have a pole that you either want to install or currently have, the utility is more than happy to run power to it as long as you're got an account with them.
This takes a bit of a turn to the big scary, which is hacking. So I have a question related to that. So many small towns are already struggling with cybersecurity a little bit. Is there additional risk here? Anything that that a city would have to consider beyond just traditional internet?
I'll answer that. So the elegance of this is it's not our signal. It's US Cellular's network and their responsibility alongside Ubiquia to maintain security. So that's one of the great things about being a landlord is we have this solution deployed that is no more and no less secure than any other aspect of the wireless carrier's network. And to be quite honest with you, we think that's great. It's awesome because we have some large companies that already have large cybersecurity operations of their own that are handling that. We don't have to handle it at all. And that's, I think, very beneficial to the public and gives them a very high level of safety.
Great. I have a question for Margaret. How could I identify where fiber is in my city or township? Any hot tips?
Yeah, so if you are going along, of course, I'm talking to you from Maine, so I'm going to start talking about snowshoes. But what we call fiber line is when you go along a fiber line and you'll see a little bit of a loop that looks like a snowshoe, a traditional wood snowshoe that's a large hoop with a tapered end. Typically, if you're looking at utility lines, when you start to see those, you're looking at fiber. A lot of times, fiber is deployed in conjunction with the lines that you'll see for your cable internet provider. So fiber lines can be hard to distinguish from telephone lines, cable lines, and other fiber optic carriers, but that's usually a good one. And then the other one is a lot of times just a little orange sleeve on the lines themselves that say that it's a fiber optic line. But those are things that are typically performed by municipal government, and that's really one of our core roles was identifying infrastructure to Ubiquia that could help them understand what their options were for deployment. And US Cellular knew a lot about the network in the area anyways as well. So if you're looking just to get an idea at the early stage, look for the snowshoes on the wires.
I like it. Quotable. Can make a t-shirt. That sounds good. Okay, a high level one. When you're saying fiber, does that mean that cable is not sufficient? Just to be clear.
Dave, you want to answer that, or Mike? Go right ahead. Yeah.
Yeah, I was going to say, just from a carrier's perspective, engineering design, I can use anything as long as it's reliable and gives the bandwidth necessary. I mean, if I had a choice, it would be fiber. Fiber eliminates a lot of issues with other types of solutions. But Dave, maybe you could talk about what you think is the optimum
Yeah,
solution for a
yeah.
street
So
radio.
so our street radio system was developed, obviously, and going back to the cybersecurity question as well. We developed that in conjunction with Ericsson, as an Ericsson radio inside of our unit. That's what actually uh, the product is. So it requires a dark fiber because the street radio has to go back to into a baseband and so forth. That's at Mike's. Mike had in Rumford, he had a cell tower not too far away, down the road a couple miles that the other end of the fiber went to. But yes, it does typically require fiber.
Okay. I've got a
I'd
couple
like
of
to
questions. Oh, go ahead.
speak to that just a smidge. Uh, it's important for people to remember, and you may not see this in other communities, but in our community, all of our cable internet broadband has a fiber backbone already associated with it. Some other places may not necessarily have that, but if you have cable internet broadband in your community, you probably already have a fiber backbone that the carrier, that your cable operator has deployed in order to get that solution close to you. Typically, any cable internet has to be within 3,000 feet of a fiber node for that type of internet, broadband internet solution. So you may already have a fiber backbone in your community through your cable operator that you don't even know about.
Great, that's really helpful. Okay, another question. This one's from Fritz. Did daisy chaining fiber to multiple poles require trenches between the poles?
Yeah. So for Rumford, no, it did not. I think it really depends on whether the fiber is aerial or whether it's already underground. So that's typically the determining factor. But in the case of Rumford, no, there was zero trenching.
All right, great. I've reached kind of critical mass on a question, which is, what if we don't want to install this on streetlights, right? So like I have a decorative fixture, I don't want to do it on a streetlight. I want to do something else, or it's not going to work for my city. Could I still, work with you? Is this capability still there for some other kind of pole or location?
Sure. The way that the street radio derives power is through the NEMA socket. So as Mark Carter had mentioned before, it really doesn't take a whole lot to install a new utility pole or something like that. It's very, very different than developing new cell towers and everything else. When it comes to utility poles and getting power to it, you can usually work with your power company to do that, which would be, I guess, an option versus installing this on a decorative pole or an ornate pole.
And Dave, correct me if I'm wrong, but you could also install and power a NEMA socket off of buildings or other structures as
That's
well
correct.
without a light. So that is always
That's
an
correct.
option as well if you don't want to put
Yes.
it directly onto a street light.
Yes.
Great.
Absolutely. Thank you, Mark.
Okay, great. Here's another one. Residents in my town have rejected cell towers for a variety of reasons, a big one being aesthetics. Have you worked with towns with similar issues, or in Georgia's perspective, have you encountered that issue?
Yeah, we actually worked with a town up in Maine. I don't even know if I should be saying towns. Mark, can I say the town?
Sure.
I
I mean,
think I can. So we worked with the
Ooh,
town
I
called.
feel like we're in on a secret.
Yeah.
Now we're all listening.
So we worked with a town called York up in Maine,
Yeah.
who had for the past several years dealt with everything from moratoriums, which prohibited new cell towers from being developed, to rejecting proposals to install antennas on existing historic water tanks and so forth. And they signed a deal with us. We negotiated the deal. It was pretty quick. I think it was a month and a half, maybe 2 months or something. And we got a deal done with York that allows the town to solve their issues by utilizing the existing street lights. And part of the problem, I think someone had mentioned it before, maybe George, I think that was you. a lot of towns, depending on where you're at, experience varying volume of call traffic. So, for example,
Yep.
if you're in a warmer climate, you have snowbirds that come down during the colder months, and there's many more users utilizing networks. Same thing up in the Northeast. You have some of the summer months where towns that might even be traditionally smaller towns might have 10,000 residences, that all of a sudden during the summer months for 2 months they have over 50,000 residences using the same networks, and that's what creates the problems. But yes,
And
they have more towns.
yeah, and I mean, to speak to Dave's point, I mean, it's actually even more extreme than that. I mean, it's really like, you have a town of 2,000 that turns into a town of 50,000 people in visitor counts or whatever. So York and some of the folks on the coast have a couple of issues, one of which is they're right up against the ocean, so you can't deploy cell coverage in the ocean. And then the other thing, which comes back to really why this is such a good solution for us, is there's, aesthetics matter in places that are bringing in visitors. And, that's part of not just the local brand, it's part of the brand for Maine as a whole, which is we're very authentic, and we really are very careful about visual clutter in our streetscapes and in our landscapes. And so, we have over the years understood and accepted the value of having certain towers off in the distance that provide our 4G signal. But it does get really hard when you start to have to build out, closer into a community or a place that's kind of up against a hill somewhere and the signal's not really that good. And I mean, Mount Desert Island probably is one of the more constrained sites. They get 2.5 million visitors a year to Acadia National Park and Bar Harbor, and there's probably less than 15,000 year-round residents down there, and you've got every problem imaginable with line of sight and cell coverage. So so these types of solutions and questions and issues, in York in particular or others, really work very well in places where you're looking to maintain your brand and to enhance your local neighborhood and the livability of your community, but also maintain its visual aesthetics and appeal.
Yeah, we also deployed these street radios in areas on the north side of Houston, in San Jose, California, in Puerto Rico, in Canada, in Florida, where there's an extreme need for additional wireless service, whether it be capacity or coverage. Yet the surrounding areas are very affluent communities that are absolutely of the mindset of not in my backyard. We want the service, but we don't want the big cell towers and everything else. So we've deployed them in various areas, from small towns in Maine to very affluent communities in California. So.
Okay, great. All right, I have a question here. So if I had attachment agreements that were made easy, how could I ensure that I would receive investment from a service provider? I know, George, you sort of mentioned Ubiquia handling a lot of this for you. So how does that all work, though? How could I ensure?
I think I can probably take that, and Mike Irizarry as well, because Mike's on the operator side, is that it really starts with the attachment agreement.
Mm-hmm.
Establishing that means that we have a conduit or a vehicle by which to get the operators deployed, and with a simplified process, cost-effective attachment agreements and so forth, it makes it much more attractive from a budgetary standpoint. The other aspect is it has to be a significant enough need for the wireless operators to spend that money. It is no dig on any areas or anything like that, but they are a business just like any other business. But it starts with the attachment agreement that allows the opportunity for them to do it, and then it's us working with the wireless operators and so forth to see if it makes sense. Mike, I don't know if you have anything to add.
No, I think that's right. I mean, connectivity is becoming more and more ubiquitous, and there are expectations by communities, expectations by the government to provide reliable connectivity. So I think you're going to see continued push for high performing connectivity, across the United States. So we'll make the investment. Carriers have shown an appetite to spend money on spectrum, infrastructure. But when it's difficult to put that investment and the equipment into play in a market because you can't get access rights, we're going to move the investment somewhere else where, we can get it deployed quickly so we can get the return and improve the customer experience. So I think this solution is fantastic because as a carrier, I just come up with the design to meet the customer's need. I get Dave and Ubiqui involved and they say, yep, we've got attachment rights, access rights in this area, and boom, we solve it. I won't name areas, but I've got small nodes I'm trying to mount on poles in certain areas, and we've been working on them for 15 months. And it's not like I can get the equipment installed in a week. It's getting the access rights that's a problem for us. So I think this solution, really is frankly taking what works well with macro networks. So you have big companies now that own the towers in a lot of places. And when I have a need for coverage or capacity, I go to them and they facilitate the installation of the equipment for me, easing the process.
Great. So your easy button is have a great agreement in place. Make the
Right.
speed of
Call
this
Dave. Dave, I need 20 nodes in this area. Make it happen for me.
Yes,
great.
sir.
I do have questions around cost. I'm sure that is a bit case by case because of specific cities and things like that being different. But we can speak about that if anyone has a general answer you can share, and cost to install. Maybe George, you can give a use case. But also, how long did the installation take from the day of an agreement? So, Mike, you said I can get these live in a week. Is that
Yeah.
sort of standard, or are there other things, other hoops to jump, other things that a city would want to know about?
Dave, you want to start or would you like me to?
Yeah, I can certainly start. So once we have the attachment agreement in place, that's, as Mike mentioned, as George, that's the difficult part for the wireless operators. The rest of it is just going through their normal process. Wireless operators have certain compliance and regulatory type items that they need to do and to abide by federal law. Things like uh, environmentals, things of that nature. Could be the long pole in the tent, but from start to finish, I mean, the actual construction or the installation type work is minutes for one of these things. The rest of it may be working with the fiber companies to ensure that fiber gets out there. There might be some fiber construction work that has to take place, some environmental compliance filings that need to take place. But really, from a deployment standpoint, it's minutes.
Great.
Nothing to add. I think the
Okay.
slide we presented and actually the system we have up in Rumford is a great example of how quickly we can get it deployed once we have the access rights.
Okay, great. I do have a couple of questions related to sort of like dual use. So, public safety, in this case, someone asked about traffic. Can you speak about whether the solution can prioritize any of those things?
Sure. So we've done many attachment agreements. I mean, just in the past couple months, we've probably signed nearly 5 million street lights that we now have under contract. So typically with those agreements, it allows you to deploy the street radio system, which is the one that we're talking about here that provides wireless service, coverage, and capacity, as well as public safety, smart video systems, and so forth for police departments. There's a large city police department in Southern California that is deploying a number of our camera systems and so forth that are license plate reader, situational awareness, and have been able to solve many crimes, murders, car thefts, carjackings, kidnappings, things like that. If
Wow.
it's something that that police departments are looking for, we can utilize the same attachment agreements to do those various platforms as well.
Okay. A specific question for George. Ohio wants to know, can you share your, what did he specifically ask? Joint use agreement.
I've been waiting for that. Yeah, I
Had
have
to
to.
do it. I've gotten a few. I'm
Yeah, I got
sifting
to check and make sure with Dave, if there's anything proprietary in there. But I think it's probably a public document. So we'll double check on that. If they
Yeah,
want that,
we have a template that we've used for utility companies with towns, with cities, and the like
Great.
as well, as well
Okay.
as George. So I'm happy if anyone wants to reach out, info@ubiquia.com. Be happy to have more conversations about template agreements and everything else. We literally don't try to make a chemistry project out of this whole thing. Simplicity, speed. That's what we want to get to with the attachment agreements.
yeah, and one of the things I would emphasize too is that this particular solution integrated well with the 4G nodes that we already had in place. That when I say 4G nodes, I'm talking about a communication node for the streetlight back to us, telling us what a streetlight's doing. It doesn't serve up 4G signal, but we had our little smart nodes on top of our streetlights talking to us, telling us what they were doing, and do I have enough power? What's my voltage? All that kind of stuff, which is actually quite useful. Um, and that was a solution we already had with Ubiquia. So really, from a tactical standpoint, from a municipal management standpoint, you have to decide as a community, okay, first of all, do you want to get another company involved to manage nodes? And then how is that going to interact with the streetlights you already have?
Mm-hmm.
For us, it was very simple. We had a very simple question. Do we want to enhance signal in our community using a trusted existing partner? And the answer to that was yes, we do. Then the best part about it, and I think this is again comes into market questions, fairness, access issues for the public, stuff like that. It's not exclusive to one carrier. And so respecting Mike and the investment that US Cellular has made in Rumford and in Maine as a whole for decades here, which we appreciate very much, it was also beneficial to us that we were serving up a solution that was going to offer open opportunity to any cellular carrier. And I think that's beneficial to everybody ultimately.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. George, a question to you. We maybe have time for this one and one more. But can you share how you decided what fee you would charge for the attachment rights?
Yeah, I mean it was pretty simple. We talked with Ubiquia. We worked through that process. There's what's called an FCC safe harbor amount that you can sort of charge and say, okay, we're open to this dollar amount, and at that number, it's considered safe harbor for a municipality to charge that amount and presume that it's fair from a market standpoint. So the federal government did a really nice job of kind of putting a guidepost, if you will, in terms of pricing on these opportunities. And we did really well. That was a great discussion with Ubiquia, and they were very transparent with us about the fact that this is it. So they gave me, they said this is how this is structured, and then we went back and confirmed through the FCC documentation, made sure that was all correct, and did our due diligence on it properly, and sent it all through legal and got to a great agreement. So I think on the nice thing for any public official is that the monetary value of what these represent to your infrastructure really is already provided by the federal government. And you might say, well, in my community, it's worth 10 times more than this because we have that many more people, our locations are that much more valuable or whatever. That's between you and everybody else if you want to go through that. What I would offer is the value is a signal. Serving up that signal and cleaning up your cell networks so that you know that they will perform reliably in a crisis is something to us. It's priceless. That's really, really important stuff, whether you're a town of 6,000 people like we are, or you're a city of 100,000 plus. This is extremely valuable. And it's also resilient infrastructure too. So.
Well, I don't think we could end on a better note than that. The value is the signal. You heard it here first, folks. So I know that any of these panelists would be happy to entertain follow-up, and there are many, many more questions than we could get to today. So thank you for your engagement, attendees. Thank you for the panel for bringing your experience, and we look forward to more conversations with you soon. Thanks, everyone.
Thanks, folks.